Oh, hello. Today we are starting on a new reading project, and that is, I've seen people call these different things, reading like so-and-so or taste test with so-and-so. I haven't decided yet what I'm gonna call this, but basically where you read another booktuber's recommendations. I've wanted to do a video like that, and I've had a few people in mind that I thought I might do it with. I saw this TikTok the other day, and all 4 of these books sounded like books that I would love. 4 books was right around the number of books I was looking to read, and I was like, you know what? The TikTok gods have picked this as the first reading project like this that I'm gonna do. So I'm going to do this with Jean from Jean's Bookish Thoughts. Jean, I love her content. There is something about the way she talks about books that just sells me every time. Even if it's a book that I'm like, would I normally be interested in reading this? A lot of times the answer is like, maybe, maybe not, but the way she talks about it, I'm like, sold, I've gotta read this. I feel like she is somebody who, if you like my content, or let's put it this way, if you like the kinds of books that I read, I think that Jean could be a really good one for you to watch. If you're not already watching her, she is a pretty large booktuber. But if you haven't watched her channel before, she's very similar to me in the sense of she does read a pretty broad mix of books. She reads romance, she reads nonfiction, she reads fantasy, she'll go for a mystery sometimes, she reads adult and YA and middle grade, she'll read she's a pretty omnivoracious in her taste. I would say she probably reads a little bit more sort of like literary fiction than I do. And well, I guess I read classics and she reads more like contemporary literary fiction, if that makes sense. Like our literary fiction tastes are slightly different. And then she does have a big emphasis, I feel like, on her channel of queer literature, which I definitely read, but I don't know that it's an emphasis for me the same way it is for her. But I think overall, if you like what I read, she would be a great person to check out. So I think she's a great person to try this experiment with. And like I said, I was watching the TikTok the other day and she appeared on my feed because TikTok's algorithm never misses. Almost never. It is convinced that I'm an ex-Mormon, but considering I am an ex-fundamentalist, like I feel like that's not too far off. Oh, and it also thinks I have ADHD, which I definitively do not. I told that to my best friend who's a psychologist and she literally laughed out loud. So there you go. Anyway, it sometimes misses, but in this case it does not miss. Like it's recommended Jean to me, like Mari from My Name is Mari Ness came up in my, like it knows me. And so she came up and she was talking about these debuts that she recommended to people, and all 4 of them sounded really intriguing to me, so I thought here's where we're gonna start. So here, we'll roll the TikTok here.
So one of the things that has surprised me a little bit about TikTok is that a lot of the books I see talked about are the same books that people were talking about on BookTube like 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago even, and that are by authors who are already super duper popular. And no shade if you love those books, that's awesome. But I just thought I would take this opportunity to recommend some books that were debuts that came out in the past year that are brilliant and you might want to check out. First up is Sister Song by Lucy Holland, which is a retelling of a traditional English folk ballad. Then we have The Mad Women's Ball by Victoria Mass. This one's actually newly translated from French into English and it's set in a women's sanatorium. We then have Madam by Phoebe Wynne, which is a gothic novel set at an all-girls boarding school. Then lastly, Cunning Women by Elizabeth Lee, which is a historical witch trials novel with a forbidden romance. So yeah, give them a shot. They're pretty good.
So that's my TBR. I'm very excited about it. And all 4 of these are books that have not come out in the US, really. Actually, I think one of them had, but most of these have not yet come out in the US. And the UK covers are vastly more beautiful than what we are going to have in the US. So I ordered all these from Book Depository. I'm waiting for them to show up, so I will check back in with you once they have arrived. Okay, so I think all of my books are here, unless there are books I forgot I ordered from Book Depository that are just showing up, which is a possibility, but thought we could just open these up and see what is what. Okay, so book numero uno, The Mad Women's Ball by Victoria Mass. So this one, and by the way, I remember nothing about any of these books. I just ordered them a couple of weeks ago and now they're here. So we're gonna find out together. A reminder of what these are about. Okay, so this is a ball that's held at a hospital for women who have been deemed insane by this prominent doctor in the 1880s in France. It looks like we have a nurse and a patient who are gonna be in some sort of plot together. I don't know, but this one is historical fiction and it seemed like it might be some kind of like thriller-ish thing. It is in translation from French. That is the first book. The next one is, let's see here. Oh yeah, okay. Cunning Women by Elizabeth Lee. Also this cover, can you see why I opted for the British covers even when a couple of these were already out? So this one is also historical fiction. So it is set in 1620s Lancashire, right after the plague, and this girl and her family are outcasts because they think they're magic maybe? Yeah, so our main character gets in it with this dude who's kind of mysterious, and then a new magistrate arrives to investigate the strange ends that keep befalling the villagers. He has his eye on one family alone and a torch in his hand. So I think that this is about like persecution of people who the village thinks might be magic in the 1600s. So again, historical fiction with, I think, sort of either a mystery, thriller / horror edge to it. And then this is the chunky big boy that just arrived today that I think has 2 books in it. So first, Sister Song, which, look at this cover, could it be more beautiful, by Lucy Holland. And this takes place, I believe, in the time of the Romans, or like right after the Romans in Britain. And it's about 3 sisters. Let's see, all 3 fear a life of confinement within the walls of their hold, their people's last bastion of strength against the invading Saxons. However, change comes on the day ash falls from the sky, bringing Mirrodin, meddler and magician. The siblings discover the power that lies within them and the land, but fate also brings Tristan, a warrior whose secrets will tear them apart. So it seems like it's sort of like a magic-y historical fiction. All of these are historical fiction, I think. Just realizing that. Magic-hinged historical fiction and set in sort of like ancient Britannia. So, intriguing there. And then last, this is the only one of the books that was already out in the US, but the cover was so like vastly inferior, I had to just go ahead and get the British cover. And I think that this one is like a gothic horror kind of thing. So maybe this one is actually set in a contemporary time. So maybe this is the only non-historical fiction, but it is set in a women's school. It says for 150 years, Caldon Hall has loomed high above the Scottish cliffs as the beacon of excellence in the ancestral castle of Lord William Hope, a boarding school for girls. It promises that its pupils will emerge resilient and ready to serve society. And then we have a new teacher who is coming in, and she is trying to find her way in the school. Let's see here, she's teaching ancient Greek and Roman history as she uncovers the darkness that beats at the very heart of Caldon. The lines between myth and reality grow ever more blurred. So I think that this is sort of like gothic horror, possibly. All of these seem to have some kind of tie to history. This is the only one that is a contemporary. The rest of them are actually set in the past, but this one seems to be tied to traditions and the past. All of these are debuts. That's kind of why Jean was recommending them. Lots of like feminist kind of vibes, I think, going on here, and a lot of light magic happening. It doesn't seem like any of these are outright like high fantasy, but they all seem to have sort of fantastical vibes, which all of that seems like it's on brand for Jean. And all of these just sounded, none of these, like not a one of these was on my radar, but I'm intrigued and excited to give her recommendations a shot. So I am just gonna mood read these, so I will check in if and when the mood strikes for any one of these. Stay tuned. Alrighty, I am about to go get some work done on my car. I just need a little thing for my tire. So while I am waiting, I am going to get started on Madam by Phoebe Wynne, which, if I'm remembering rightly, is sort of like a gothy girls' school kind of story. This just sounded good to me of the kind of books that I had to read. I haven't started any of them yet, but sort of a gothic, dark academia maybe type story sounded like it would appeal. So I will get started on this and check back in with you guys when I have some thoughts. Okay, I am at the vet waiting to pick up Marple. She is so sad. Oh, she's so scared with this stuff, but it's for her good. Okay, so Madam, I have been reading this as my sort of like waiting for appointments kind of book, about a third of the way in, and I'm really enjoying it. It's one of those books that is very purposefully disorienting. Basically, there's a new head of classics at this fancy school, and she's replacing the last head of classics who apparently had like some kind of incident with a student. And we don't know a lot about that yet, other than the student is a straight up creeper. And so Rose is she's who we're following. She's the new classics teacher. She gets there, and like it feels kind of like Stepford Wivesy almost. It's interesting because she cannot figure out, she's like trying to teach her classes and everyone is acting like her classes are not that important, but it's like this really elite, prestigious boarding school. So it's sort of like playing against type, where usually the move here is that the new teacher comes and like the students are so much smarter than she is and like she's trying to give lessons but they're not hard enough. It's kind of like, it's not that the students are smarter than she is, it's that they're snootier than she is, or like they clearly understand something about her job that she doesn't. So it's like we're trying to figure out with her what the kind of unspoken rules of this place are. I do think it's somewhat improbable in the sense of like she seems very confused about what's going on and like does not know the rules at all, and I just find that a little improbable. But other than that, I'm very much enjoying the vibes of this. It is very sort of like unsettling in a way that I think something attempting to be gothic should be. So far so good. We'll see what's going on with this creepy ass school.
Okay, say hello to Hastings. Hi, Hastings. So I have finished Madam by Phoebe Wynne. I have complicated feelings about this because, for one thing, because this is his debut, I think that this is a pretty impressive debut. I felt like it was very propulsively readable for the most part. It dragged, I felt like, at some places, but for the most part, I felt like it was a really pretty successful book. Hi, buddy. Do you want to come sit next to me? Is that what you're trying to do? Oh, okay. I've got a little snuggle buddy. So yeah, I felt like for the most part it was pretty successful in what it was trying to do, but it did the debut-ness of it in some parts. I like the message of this. I like the themes, and I think that it's very atmospheric. It's successful as a gothic in that sense. I think it's a little on the nose with its thematic content and concerns. I don't feel like there's a lot of subtlety here or layers. So in that respect, I don't know that it's like the most successful book, but it was very entertaining. And like I said, I liked the atmosphere of this a lot. It felt like there was this very big sense of dread in it, which I enjoyed. So yeah, I think definitely some interesting things here. I think the lack of subtlety will not be to everyone's taste, so just know that. But yeah, I think overall, I'd call this a success. Not a book I would have picked up on my own, so I'm also just appreciative that it got put on my radar in a way that it would not have been otherwise. So first book down, not sure which one we'll read next, but apparently me and Hastings are gonna snuggle. So I'll catch you guys for the next one. Hey, sweet boy. Yeah, you ready to take a nap? Alrighty, so I have finished Cunning Women, which is by Elizabeth Lee, and this one was about a like rural hamlet in the early 1600s in Lancashire in England. And basically in the years prior to the book starting, there were like witch hunts. And as a result, there's like this one family of cunning women who are basically considered to be witches. And the reason I think they're witches is because they have like this birthmark sitch happening. This has like devastated their family. They are like completely outcast from society and they have to sort of just like make their way by hook or by crook. There's the mom, she has a son and two daughters. One of the point of view character really is her daughter Sarah, and then there's like this little girl named Annie who has not yet gotten the birthmark, and so they're hopeful that maybe she will not be outcast if she never has this birthmark. But Sarah also then starts getting into this relationship with this local farmer's son Daniel, but they can't tell anyone because it's like forbidden. And then also there's like this magistrate who ends up coming back to town, and there's going to be like witch hunts again. So I think that this is a very like slow burning kind of historical fiction novel. Like if you're looking for something really like plot heavy, I think that this is going to be a disappointment for you. But I liked sort of the themes of this, of like, what does it mean to be a woman in this time period who is different in some way, and like how like there's basically no options for you. Like, what are you really supposed to do? There was an interesting kind of commentary with Daniel because he's a very like gentle soul, and sort of like what toxic patriarchy does to him as well. Yeah, I mean, I think the writing was really nice. It's, you know, again, I think it's a slow burn, and I think pacing wise, I wish it was a little bit not as meandering at the beginning, but I would give this like a 3.5 star. I will tell you, I have subsequently downgraded Madam. I originally gave it 3.5, but the more I thought about it, I ended up giving it 3 stars. I would say that this is a more successful book to me than Madam was, but I also feel like Madam kept me turning the pages a little bit more than this one did. So it's just sort of like, I would say in terms of quality wise, I would think of this as probably higher quality, but in terms of page turneriness or my personal engagement, even though I think Madam had some bigger sort of like misses with it, I think it was in some ways more interesting. So I don't know. Anyway, all that to say, that's how I landed on that rating. And I think the next book I'm gonna read is gonna be Sister Song. So stay tuned for that. So this is kind of apropos of nothing, but I do have a new bookcase that I'm putting together. When I did my office library redo, I mentioned that I felt like this bookcase possibly was not going to be a long-term fit, and I have landed on that, so I thought I would show you guys putting up my new bookcase just because I like to watch this, so I thought you guys might like it as well. Here you go. Hope you enjoy. Alrighty, it's done. It is currently undergoing kitty cat inspection. I think it's passing. But yeah, it looks a lot fuller because there's only 5 shelves instead of 6. But because of the way that the shelves are open, you can fit more on a shelf. So yeah, I think that it's working pretty well. I think I need to have some kind of sign or picture up here just to finish it off. But yeah, we are done. Okay, so I have read and finished Sister Song at this point, and this is definitely my favorite of the books that I have read so far. Things that I really like about this. I really love that it's a retelling. I'm actually not familiar at all with the source material of the retelling because it is retelling the Two Sisters Old British folk ballad. I had zero familiarity with that until I read this. But things that I really like about this reminds me a lot of Circe in terms of its writing quality and overall vibes, which is that it's historical fiction that has a sort of like magical or mythological component to it. So it's historical fiction, but like with some magic thrown in. And that is something that does really work quite well for me. Cunning Women also kind of had this, but not in the same way. And the way that it was incorporated into this book worked a lot more for me. I loved all of the feminist themes of this book and the exploration of relationship between sisters. Again, I think there's some parallels with that to Cunning Women in particular, because there's also a very specific bond between sisters in that book. But this is between 3 sisters, 2 of whom have a very specific road to tread together, and one of whom is initially their sister, but really conceptualizes themselves as not female. So I thought that was an interesting layer to this book. I don't want to get into the details because I think you should just like let that part unfold for you, but I really liked that bit. There's also kind of a tragic romance in this book and in Cunning Women. I'm seeing a lot of parallels, basically. That's what I'm getting at, between Cunning Women and Sister Song, but I definitely liked Sister Song better, and I very much enjoyed how the romantic component of this book resolved. I should mention, I don't think I've actually even told you the characters. We've got Riva, who is terribly scarred and is sort of looking to magic hopefully heal her. We have Senna, who is sort of the youngest, kind of spoiled sister, who also kind of doesn't understand the difficult situation their kingdom is in. And then we have Kina, who is the oldest sister who wants to be sort of the heir to their father, who is ruling over this kingdom in ancient Britain, The Romans have just pulled out. And then we also have like these interesting themes about religion and like kind of local magic, which again is a parallel that this book has to Cunning Women. Gildas, I think, is the priest's name, or like he's a Christian priest, but then the sisters are wanting to practice their traditional religion, which includes magical elements that they are able to practice. So we also have that going on. Anyway, if you can't tell, there's a lot going on in this book. It's actually quite plot heavy. It moved along at a really nice clip. I very much enjoyed the writing, and all in all, I really like this book. I would give this 4 stars. Definitely my favorite so far, and definitely the one I would most recommend at this point. I still have 1 book left to read, but this I would never have picked up without this video, and I'm really glad I did, because I'm excited to have something that I think is such a good read-alike title for Circe. Like, I definitely think if you liked Circe and you're wanting something with similar vibes, this is a book I would point you to. But also, I just really enjoyed this book. It was really fun, and I would never have picked it up without Jean's recommendation. So I feel like this book alone has made the whole project worth it. Even though I liked the other 2 books fine, this one felt kind of like a little bit more special to me. I have finished the last of the books, which is The Mad Women's Ball by Victoria Moss. And I really like this one. So this is a pretty short little novel that packs like a pretty good little punch, because it is centered around what I have since, via Wikipedia-ing, have surmised was some actual events in the history of medicine, which is there is this doctor named Dr. Charcot in Paris who was very famous. It sounds like he identified a lot of neurological diseases. He was like a neurologist in the mid to late 1800s, so it seems like an interesting gig for that time period. But for instance, he identified MS, he found Tourette syndrome, but he named it after one of his students. He found Lou Gehrig's disease. Like he described a lot of diseases for the first time, but he was most famous for having this asylum, basically, it seems like, of women who had hysteria. And it seems like he's a pretty controversial figure. I'm gonna say he doesn't come out looking great in this novel, but from what I was reading, it sounds like he kind of gets painted, like it seems like he was just a complex guy, because he did really strongly advocate, no, hysteria is not just a women's disease, it is something that men can have as well. And he was very focused on it having like a neurological basis. But I think like kind of as the realms of psychiatry and neurology developed more, I think a lot of his work became sort of seen as passé or out of date or just like wrong. And then he was very famous for having these like women who would kind of perform their hysterics for groups of medical students. There were 2 famous ones. One was called Marie and one was called Louise Augustine. Yeah, again, they would sort of like perform their hysteria. And then Augustine like ran away from the hospital called the The Salpêtrière. She ran away from that. And so anyway, all that to say, this sent me down, like this is based on some of those real life events. And this is a very thoughtful novel, I think, in terms of talking about the relationship between mental health and like women's issues, especially in this historical context. So the sort of titular event that this is leading up to is this night where all of the women who are in the hospital get dressed up and kind of rub elbows with the bourgeoisie, the hoi polloi of Paris. You know, we learn about like why some of these women are in this hospital, like some of the things that have happened to them. We're also following a nurse named Therese, I think? No, Genevieve. Genevieve, somebody named Eugenie, who is significant. This is so short, I don't really want to like get into the plot because I feel like it's so short you should just read it for yourself. But anyway, I did think that this was a very thoughtful novel. There's some elements of sort of like magical realism, I guess, that I don't think really worked fully for me. I don't know that this book like fully came together, but I liked different parts of it quite a bit. And again, I'm trying not to give you spoilers here, but the things I did not like as much, I still walk away from this feeling quite warmly about it. And I think it's if you're somebody who wants like a piece of historical fiction that's gonna like kind of just make you think or reflect, I think that this would be really good. So I would say this is probably my second favorite thing I've read after Sister Song, and I would never have picked it up without Jean's recommendation. So thankful for that. So yeah, I think we have now read all the books, so I will meet you guys back and we'll do a final little wrap up. Alrighty, so we have finished all of the books, and all in all, even though I wouldn't say I just loved and will forever remember every single one of these books, I think that this was a really fruitful experiment for me because I think I have better language around why I don't read as much historical fiction anymore. And it's because I think I just kind of got burnt out on it because there is a lot of it that feels kind of samey. Which, as I was reflecting on these 4 books, 3 of them are historical fiction, and I would say all 3 of them have very similar themes. Now, granted, I am getting my recommendation from a single source. I am, therefore, somewhat skewed in the kind of historical fiction that I would be pointed towards, but this just reminds me of a lot of the historical fiction that I've really liked, and I think that there is more of it that doesn't feel special to me than other genres. Anyway, so this is my ranked stack. I gave this a 3-star, 3.5, 3.5, 4. Clear favorite. I'm gonna tell you though, even though this book has problems, so Madam, I guess let's start at the bottom, we'll work our way up. Madam has problems, I think, and in looking at some of the reviews after I read this, I can see that other people agree with that. But I actually frankly think I'm gonna hold on to this book because I actually think it's kind of interesting. And I think if you just like a dark academia vibe, if you like a boarding school kind of story and like feminist themes and sort of like what's going on type of a plot, I actually think that as long as you go in knowing that this isn't a perfect book, I think you could probably still have a pretty good time in this book. So I'm gonna tell you that if I were picking one to read again, I would definitely pick Madam over Cunning Women. I enjoyed reading this more than I enjoyed reading this, even though I gave this a lower rating ultimately than I gave this one, because I think that Cunning Women is just, it's fine, it's well executed, it does a good job of what it's trying to do. I think particularly for a debut, the writing is quite nice, but I just don't think it's a very memorable book. Like, I will not remember much about this in a year. And I just find that is true with a lot of historical fiction. At least, 30-something-year-old Mara feels that. 20-something-year-old Mara really loved it. I don't know. Maybe it's just a reflection of my evolving taste that a lot of historical fiction to me just feels very similar. And this reminded me of that. But that being said, I did think that The Mad Women's Ball was a little bit of a cut above. And while there are elements in this book, I don't want to talk too much about what happens in this book because it is so short and I think you should just kind of get into it. There are elements in this book that I don't know that I loved in a book like this. This made me do some historical research I wouldn't have done otherwise. The setting was unusual, the premise was unusual, and just all around, this was the kind of historical fiction that I would read more of, and I think I struggled to find. So while I had problems with it, I did ultimately walk away with a really warm remembrance of it. And then Sister Song. This is definitely the triumph of this video because I hadn't heard about this book, and I wouldn't have picked it up were it not for Jean's recommendation, and I really, really like this. This is a book that I think a lot of people will really like. I mentioned this, I'm sure, when I was vlogging it originally, but if you like Circe, this is a book I think you should pick up. I think it takes some of the similar themes we've seen in all of these books. These are books that are all very thematically similar, which makes sense because they're all very Jean. Like all of these books, when I was reading them, I was like, oh yeah, I totally get why this is a book Jean likes or recommends or, liked enough to mention in a video. They are all very similar to the themes that I've read in other books that I have picked up upon her recommendation. So in that respect, this book is similar to those other ones in that way. But I think what is special about this book is that it does something, it does those themes in a slightly different way in the context of a historical type setting within like a myth retelling kind of frame that makes it a little more special than some other books I've read with themes like this. I really like what this has to say
say about the bonds of sisterhood. I really like what this has to say about gender, talking about kind of gender expression or gender expectations throughout time and place. There's just a lot to like about this book. I also think that this would be a very good book club pick. If you're somebody who is looking for a book club pick, I think that this could be a good one because I think there's a lot to talk about. It is very readable. It has a lot of plot in it. I flew right through it. Like, I think that this is a really good book. Similar to Circe, though, there is just something about this book that while I'm like, yeah, I really, like, in my head, I like a lot of it, there's something in my heart that just doesn't fully connect. And it goes back to, I'm wondering if I just don't, I don't know, maybe I just like shot my wad too early in my life on historical fiction and it's hard for me to just fully love it the way that I used to. But if you like Circe, also if you picked up and loved The Perilous Guard upon my recommendation, there's also some of that vibe I feel like in this book. It reminded me of some of the things I liked in that book. Yeah, anyway, this was definitely the big hit of this reading project. So here's my stack. I am keeping 3 of these and unhauling 1 of them. So I actually think if that's any indication, pretty good hit rate. I'm gonna unhaul this one because like I said, I just didn't think it was that memorable and I don't think I'll refer to it again. But even though Madam I don't think is as good, I do think it's more memorable. So I'm holding on to these 3. And all in all, this was a really fun project. I think I've learned that me and Jean maybe have different kind of genre preferences or expressions, maybe have different sort of emphasis in terms of what genres really like do it for us. Because I like historical fiction, but I think I just don't connect with it the same way that I think she does, at least at this point in my life. But that also makes sense based on the fact that she's like getting her PhD in classics. You know, she also really loves fantasy, etc. So I think I, from this, better can say that what I think Jean and I have in common in terms of our reading is that we do read pretty widely in terms of the types of books we will pick up. And I think we have a lot of parallel interests in terms of our themes and the kinds of characters we like. So I think that's kind of where I've landed in terms of comparing our taste. So with that being said, obviously you should go subscribe to Jean. Would be shocked if you're subscribed to me and not to her. She is fantastic. She also, I forgot, this is actually very fortuitous timing. I forgot that this was happening in September, but she does have a new book coming out. This is her debut book and it is called The Flames of Albion, I think. I will link to it in the description. So you should definitely check that out. If talking about these books and sort of where her thematic interests lie and the kinds of books she likes to read has intrigued you to pick up a book from her that she has written, this would be a good time to do that. So I will have that link in the description. I'm not sure if it's out in both the UK and the US, but it's at least out in the UK this month. So congratulations to Jean. That's a huge milestone. So with all that being said, I think that will do it for this video. This was a fun project for me. Let me know if you enjoyed it. I'd be happy to do something like this again with a different online book person. If you have suggestions of who you think that might be fun for me to do with, let me know below. And yeah, I think that will do it for this video. So if you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I think that will do it. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!